Bonjour, hello, welcome everyone. Bienvenue to episode 3 of our special French Heritage series. In this episode, presented in collaboration with the cultural services of the Embassy of France in the United States, the cultural operator Centre des Monuments Nationaux, and the Sainte Chapelle at the center of Paris. Welcome on behalf of all of us. I'm Tiana, your host, and today I have the pleasure to welcoming you at the Sainte Chapelle. Bienvenue à tous. So before we get started, I'd like to check in with everyone. Let me know, how are you today? Where are you tuning in from? This is exciting to be back. Bonjour, Jeanne du Colorado. How nice. How is the weather there? Bonjour, Mary, Houston. Andrew, bonjour, de Floride. Oh, you must have such nice weather there, Andrew. Who else do we have? Marta, bonjour, Marta, from Baltimore. How are you going? Comment ça va? Bonjour, Tiffany, from New Orleans. Wonderful. Hello, Patricia. Hi, Tricia. How are you? Oh, beautiful. Nice day here in Washington. Beautiful. I'm so glad to see so many of you. Right now, we're 150 of us getting together. How wonderful. Hi, Heather. How are you? From Minneapolis. We have Carol from California. Beautiful. This is wonderful. We're really from all over the United States today. Hi, from Wisconsin. Anybody from outside of the country today joining us? Say hi if you are tuning in from anywhere around the world. Beautiful. There are lots of people from California. Wow. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here so early with us. That's wonderful. We have Walter from San Germán, Puerto Rico. Wonderful. Hola, Walter. Bonjour. Oh, Kathy, Australia. There. This is wonderful. Samara from Angleterre, de l'Angleterre, bien sûr. Et nous avons aussi Jan de Phoenix. Thank you, everyone. I'm so excited to have you all with us today. This is a really, really special program we have today. And we're so thankful for the Sainte Chapelle to collaborate with us on this episode. Today they are bringing you the Sainte Chapelle as we have never experienced it before. So they have been working on this remote visit. It is offered by the Centre des Monuments Nationaux and the Sainte Chapelle, and now we can visit the Sainte Chapelle in 360 for the first time. So today they are giving us a preview. They are launching these remote visits that are available on their websites, and we have the opportunity to explore this stunning Gothic architecture from the 13th century. We're going to be able to get up close and look at the breathtaking stained glass and contemplate Paris from the spire of the chapelle. So I hope you're ready for this beautiful preview. This is a visit that when you're taking it with one of the lecturers from the Sainte Chapelle is a 1 hour 30 experience where the lecturer will go in depth into the Sainte Chapelle, its architecture, its history, and will take all the questions from you. And today we get a preview from it. So we will first talk with Cécile Rive. She will introduce us the monument. She's the administrator of La Sainte Chapelle and La Conciergerie. We will share a few words with her. about La Sainte Chapelle and the meaning of La Sainte Chapelle for the people of France and what she's planned for us. And then we will meet with Christopher Ryder, who is in charge of communication and commercial for La Sainte Chapelle. He will lecture us today on this preview of the tour of this masterpiece of French heritage. So, without further ado, let us welcome our guest. Bonjour Cécile. Bonjour Christopher. How are you?
Hi, everyone.
Thank you both so much for being with us today. We are very excited for this preview you're offering us. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. We are very happy too, and it's a great pleasure for us to welcome you today. So, as the administrator of the Sainte Chapelle and the conciergerie, I have the sense to be responsible for a unique and very exceptional French heritage, welcoming more than 1 million visitors a year. And I have a very nice team of around 60 people working daily for both the conciergerie and the Sainte Chapelle, a team to which Christopher also belongs.
Wonderful. So, Christopher, tell us a little bit about yourself.
As Christopher, I've been working here for many years within the Conciergerie Sainte Chapelle. I'm in charge of economic and communication development for both buildings. Basically, I have to try and generate revenue for both buildings other than ticket sales and obviously the boutique. And I manage the communications for all our activities, our daily events, and our major temporary exhibitions.
Thank you. Thank you. So now back to Cécile. Cécile, I wanted to ask you about your missions. How did you cope? What were your main missions and challenges in the past years, especially the past 2 years?
Well, let's say that my role is to manage all aspects of the life of the monument, including the educational and cultural program, including also all the administration, and of course the conservation of the building and the access conditions as well. So I do many different things. And my main challenges in the past years were to reflect on better conditions to access and to visit the monument. So, for instance, we've made possible for people with reduced mobility to access to the Sainte Chapelle, both to the lower and to the upper chapel. We also extended the opening hours in the high season, and we have recently developed the online ticketing service. So that if you come to Paris and if you come to visit the Sainte Chapelle, you can choose your time slot. So it considerably reduces the waiting times and all these access conditions, visiting conditions are explained on our website. We have, of course, an English version of the website.
Wonderful. So, everyone, any questions you have for Cécile and Christopher, don't hesitate to post them in the comments, or any information you might need from us. Don't hesitate to share. So Cécile, what have you planned for 2022 and beyond for the visitors?
We just began restoration work on the western facade of the Sainte Chapelle. So it needed urgent work because this part of the building has not been restored since the 19th century. And then we will continue the restoration with the southern facade, including the stained glass windows that had not been restored in the last campaign ending in 2015. The very good news is that the monument will remain open during the restoration works. It will take about 7 years to complete. And so the first phase of the works don't impact the interior view. So if you come to Paris, you of course can visit the Sainte Chapelle and still admire the extraordinary light diffused by the stained glasses. So this is the very good news. We also have in this year, so 2022, a very exciting cultural program. For instance, if you come in autumn, we will host a sound creation made by Robert Wilson for the Sainte Chapelle. So it will be displayed every weekend from October this year to January next year. And if you come earlier, you can also attend to classic music concerts at the Sainte Chapelle organized by Euro Music Productions, and all these information are also on our website. And at least it's very important for us, but of course we want to maintain the connection with our international visitors who cannot maybe travel for the moment to and plan a trip to Paris. So that's why I'm so happy to share with you today this preview visit virtual tour that will give you access to areas that are not generally open to the public, and also it will give you some details of the stained glasses, for instance. So I hope that you will enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing you anyway.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Cecile. So I just want to share again a few of the programs you're running here in the banners, so everyone can take notes. But you can also this preview is going to be available for 5 days until next Monday if you want to watch it again, or if you want to share it with friends and family. So those are the different programs Cecile just mentioned. Her and her team are working on right now. So now we are going to leave the floor to Christopher, who is going to be our lecturer for this wonderful preview. So Christopher, maybe you want to introduce us to this work before, and how can people get access to the full tour?
Okay, yeah. So as Tiana said at the very beginning of her introduction, this is a new technique that we're operating, 360-degree remote visits, guided tours. They last an hour and a half, including questions and answers. We start them this coming Friday, the 25th of February. All the times and details are on the website on the English version. You can just pay for one screen, and then obviously as many people as possible can watch one screen, and you can chat and dialogue with the guide who will be taking through the visit. As I said, it's a new technique. So we're going to start the visit in a couple of seconds, just to let you know that sometimes the movement of the screen can be quite rapid. If I'm going too fast, put it in the chat box and my colleagues will make sure that I can slow down. And if you can't hear me, let us know also. I'm not in a conventional office. As you can see behind me, I have a medieval part of a vaulted ceiling. I'm in a 14th century room, so sometimes the sound isn't great. So if you have any comments, just put them in the chat box and the comments will come up for me. So I think we can go over and start, Tiana. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll start sharing my screen.
I'm just going to share a few of the wonderful comments we're getting from our
Okay, so hopefully you can all see the courtyard we're standing in. Yes?
Fantastic, yes.
No? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to start the visit in the main courtyard of what is today the Palace of Justice of Paris. The building contains the main law courts of Paris and the Supreme Courts of France. The architecture you can see here obviously isn't medieval. It doesn't date from the construction of the Sainte Chapelle. It's in fact an 18th century facade. It was constructed following a fire of 1776. So it was built during the reign of Louis XVI, and it's in a neoclassical style. Although impressive and aesthetically it's very pleasing, it unfortunately today slightly masks the Sainte Chapelle that you can see here on the left. Today the Sainte Chapelle is slightly hidden behind this 18th century gallery. Back in the Middle Ages, of course, the Sainte Chapelle stood alone in the courtyard. You can just see it popping up above the gallery with the northern windows here, its roof and famous 19th century spire. To give you an idea of what the palace looked like back in the Middle Ages, we can have a look at this digitalized reconstruction, which was made using original archive documents. So here we see the palace at the very end of the 14th century. As you can see, it's a fortified castle. You can see the massive walls surrounding it. It's built on the western part of an island in the middle of the River Seine. It's known as the Ile de la Cité, the island of the city. The palace today, most of it has disappeared. But to give you an idea, this western facade here contained the royal residence. So these would be the private apartments of the king and his family, overlooking the ornamental gardens here on the western point of the island. This large structure here in the foreground contained the great ceremonial chamber. Not only was it a residence for the kings of France, but it also housed the administration. And to give you an example, in this building here on the right, on the north-hand side, was where the parliament assembled. Now, the palace was the home of the French kings in Paris from the 10th century through to the mid-14th century. The Sainte Chapelle, you see it here on the left, as it would have appeared in the Middle Ages, standing alone in the main courtyard. The Sainte Chapelle is a 13th century construction. It was commissioned by Louis IX. Louis IX was the French king who reigned from 1226 through to 1270. He was canonized following his death and is the only French king to have become a saint. Sainte Chapelle had acquired in 1239 some holy relics relating to the crucifixion of Christ, to the Virgin Mary, and to other saints. He had them brought to Paris and had the Sainte Chapelle constructed as a giant reliquary or jewel box to house these holy relics. The most famous, of course, being the crown of thorns said to be worn by Christ during his crucifixion. There were also pieces of the true cross and other relics relating to the last days of Christ on earth, which we call the Passion. The Sainte Chapelle was constructed in 7 years. Work started around 1241. We know it was completed in 1248, which was an incredible achievement for the period. And it has obviously withstood the test of time. It's still there today. It's still just as magnificent. Although the palace itself has been damaged and destroyed several times by fire, the Sainte Chapelle has never suffered from the fires. Now we're going to leave this reconstruction, get back to the main courtyard, and have another look at the chapel behind this 18th century gallery. We're going to go through the arches here into the southern courtyard of the palace. And here we can get a much better view of the southern facade of the chapel. Now, the Sainte Chapelle is a Gothic structure. It's mainly in what we call a radiant style. Now, contrary to most Gothic structures of this period, it's void of external decoration. It's not a particularly attractive building from the outside. There's no or very little ornamentation. The decor that you see on the upper part here are mainly 19th century additions. And of course, the spire, which we're going to go up to later, is also a 19th century addition. So the main body of the structure has no sculpture or no intricate or rich decorations. All we can see are these huge vertical buttresses that seem to protrude from the main structure itself. What we can see is that the chapel is built on 2 levels. You have an upper level here and a lower level down here. Now, of course, it's within the Palace of Justice, which today is still very much a place of work. So we have a lot of rather ugly buildings surrounding it. So we're going to go around to the western facade and see the entrances to both levels. Here you can clearly identify the upper level, the upper chapel, and the lower chapel. The upper chapel connected directly through a series of galleries to the private apartments of the king. The upper chapel was reserved purely for the use of the king, his immediate family, and any invited guests. The upper chapel contained the famous relics. The lower chapel had 2 functions. We're going to move in a little bit closer. Its principal function, of course, was to provide a solid basement or foundation to the upper level. So it's rather squat, lower building. Its daily function was to provide a place of worship for the many servants and staff who worked and lived within the palace. We know, for example, in the beginning of the 14th century, about 2,000 people were employed within the palace itself for its daily running. Now, the lower chapel is where visitors enter today. And if we get in a little bit closer, you can see that the lower chapel is dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Here we see a statue of her holding the Christ child. Now, the statue is a 19th century sculpture. The original medieval statue was unfortunately totally destroyed during the French Revolution. This sculpture was made by the artist known as Geoffroy de Chaume. Geoffroy de Chaume based his sculpture on the famous Virgin and Child that was in Notre Dame Cathedral at the time. Now, we're not going to visit the lower chapel. As we said earlier, there are far more detailed visits available where we're going to go through the whole building. What we're going to do is make our way directly upstairs. Hold on, we're going to go up as if in an elevator to the upper chapel. Here on the left, you can see the royal entrance. So this is where the king would access his chapel via the galleries leading from his private apartments. And if I pull back a bit, you can see that the upper chapel is dedicated to Christ, which of course is logical. This is where relics relating to his crucifixion were held. The statue, as with that of the Virgin downstairs, is a 19th century sculpture, the original having been badly damaged during the French Revolution. And if I move over here to give you a better view, Cécile and Tiana explained to you earlier that we're starting restoration work on the building. In fact, this whole facade here now is being covered in scaffolding. The main object at the moment is to totally restore the porch here. The lower parts here, what we call the reliefs, are in fact 19th century. They date from the same time as the construction of the statue of Christ. And if we move in a little bit closer here, hopefully you can make it out. You can just see the difference here on the left and the right. We've been testing over the last year different methods to see how we can actually clean the masonry. Although the lower part is 19th century and relatively easy to clean, this upper section here, which is far more intricate, dates from the actual construction itself. This is medieval sculpture dating from the 13th century. And what's unusual and quite unique with the Sainte Chapelle is amongst the decoration you see here, the foliage and the floral decoration, we actually have traces of the polychromy, or the colors that we use, the different pigments to highlight the sculpture in the 13th century. So cleaning this part of the building is quite a challenge, as we don't want to erase the original pigments that are still visible. There's a lot of gold, blue, and red in amongst these sculptures here. Now, most Gothic buildings from the 12th, 13th century were quite dark, gloomy buildings. The Sainte Chapelle is an exception. Architectural methods had progressed greatly, and the Sainte Chapelle was really quite unique. And you have to try and put yourself in the place of someone from the 14th, 13th or 14th century entering this building, seeing for the first time, being absolutely dazzled by light, color, and a sense of space, which hadn't existed in Gothic structures up until the construction of the Sainte Chapelle itself. So we're going to go through the royal entrance directly into the upper chapel, which hopefully give you an idea of what you would experience if you entered the building through the royal entrance. So as you can see, all the walls and masonry seem to have disappeared. They appear to have been replaced purely by light, glass, and color. It's a bit of an optical illusion. If we move in a little bit further here, and we line up with the northern side, for example, here you see the apostles, often referred to as the pillars of the church. Well, here they literally are the pillars of the church. These very delicate clusters of pillars, very richly decorated, are in fact the vertical buttresses that you saw on the outside of the building, the rather ugly buttresses. This is what allows the Sainte Chapelle to obtain this vertical thrust and these incredible windows that are over 15 meters high. This was a real technical achievement at the time, made possible by these architectural techniques of the buttresses. And also, it's one of the first buildings known to have incorporated wrought iron. In fact, halfway up the stained glass windows here, you can just make out there's a band slightly larger than the others. Well, this is in fact almost like a belt of metal running through the building, which also helps to achieve the vertical thrust. Now we're going to move in a little bit further, and I want you to more or less experience, as if you were standing in the middle of the chapel, really take in the expanse of glass, color, and light. So hopefully I'm not going too fast for you. These are the southern windows. We're coming round to the great western rose window here, which we'll go into detail a little bit later. The northern windows here, slightly darker sometimes because of course they have that 18th century gallery behind them. And back down into the nave, and we're standing in front of what we call, the reliquary platform. So this structure here is in fact almost a monument in itself. This is a stone carved structure upon which on this upper level you had the famous relics. The stained glass is comprised of over 1,100 panels. They depict scenes and stories from the Old and New Testaments of the Bible. They are set in a chronological order. The first bay here represents Genesis with the creation of the earth, the skies, the flora, the fauna, and of course then Adam and Eve. You go through to the book of Exodus, book of Numbers, book of Joshua. The most important windows in terms of the narration are probably the windows directly behind the reliquary platform here. These windows represent the life of Christ, his last days on earth here, and also the life of St. John the Baptist. Most of these are actually hidden by the reliquary platform. When you're actually in the Sainte Chapelle, you can't get a good view of them. But we're going to go up where the public can't go, hopefully. This will take us up there. So here we are on top of the reliquary platform. I'll just spin us around so you get a view, a global view of the chapel seen from this level. Now, many people come to the Sainte Chapelle and say, well, where are the relics? Well, the relics aren't here anymore. The relics were actually removed at the very beginning of the French Revolution. They were housed in a huge gilded casket which stood on this platform. And here, this will give you an idea what it looked like. Let's get rid of that. So here it is in fact open. It was a huge solid silver casket covered in gold, precious and semi-precious stones. When opened, you could see inside the different reliquaries that contained the various objects. Of course, the most famous being the crown of thorns. And here you can see the reliquary, which is formed in the shape of a crown, pieces of the true cross, held in reliquaries in the form of crucifixes, and other relics relating either to Christ, to the Virgin Mary, or other saints. They were removed during the French Revolution. Many were sold off. The reliquaries were melted down for their value of the precious metals, and the stones were sold off. The crown of thorns remains today. It's not in the Sainte Chapelle. It was held until 2019 in Notre Dame Cathedral. It was one of the first objects that had to be saved during the fire. Now we're going to take a closer look at some of the windows, just to give you an idea. We can move in so you can see the quality of the 13th century stained glass. As you can see, each panel is made up of tiny pieces of glass. The color is fused at the time of making the glass itself, and then the detail is painted on. The main colors you see in the 13th century glass are the reds, golds, blues, and greens. Quite dazzling. The effect is incredible, almost 800 years later. This scene here might be familiar to some of you. Here on the bottom half of this panel, we see on the left the Archangel Gabriel. He's announcing to Mary that she's to become the Mother of God. Here on the upper part, we see Mary telling the news to her cousin Elizabeth. And of course, Elizabeth was later to become the mother of John the Baptist. And we'll just go behind the reliquary platform and take a very quick look at another scene that might be familiar to you. These two central bays, or lancets as we call them, actually represent the last days of Christ on earth. And here down in the bottom left-hand corner, hopefully you can zoom in a little bit, you can make out the famous Last Supper. In the middle of the panel, Christ is seated holding a chalice, and he's surrounded by his apostles. Now, when we turn round, we get an incredible view of the western rose window. Now, the rose window is a later addition. There's always been a rose window at the Sainte Chapelle. The 13th century rose window was dismounted at the end of the 15th century and replaced by this incredible flamboyant Gothic structure. It's about 16 meters wide. Now we can take a closer look at it. We can, hopefully this isn't going to make you a little bit seasick. We're going to fly over the upper chapel and hopefully arrive underneath the rose window. So this is what we call flamboyant architecture, almost in the form of a flame radiating from a central point, the oculus, which is up here, which we'll see in detail in a couple of minutes. Stained glass techniques had evolved by the 15th century. This is stained glass made in the Venetian style, where the colors have actually been painted onto the glass itself. So larger panels were possible. The detail of the characters that are shown and the different illustrations are far more detailed than they are in the 13th century stained glass. Now, last year, we managed to digitalize all of these panels using a new technique called gigapixel. Now, to show you in detail, I just have to come out of the full screen here, click on this, and open it up. So this is one of the gigapixel images that were taken last year. The 89 panels of the rose are quite visible, and as you can see, it's almost like a firework spurting out from a central oculus. Now we can zoom in and see the tiniest detail. If I go slow enough, hopefully it won't blur. Now we're just moving into the central oculus. just has to stabilize a bit. We can zoom in right on the figure of Christ, and you can really see every single detail and every crack. The rose window was completely restored between 2013 and 2015, so it's recently restored. The rose window relates the story of the apocalypse from the book of Revelations. Christ has returned, and he's relating to John of Patmos, who we see here kneeling in front of Christ, the end of times. He's surrounded by the 7 churches of Asia, the early Christian churches. He has a sword in his mouth. Christ said, of course, that when he returns, he will conquer not through violence, but by the word of God, which is represented by this sword in his mouth. Now we're going to pull back a little bit. You can see all the detail of the masonry of each panel. It really is quite spectacular now. Pull back. You might just recognize 2 of the figures down here. Some of you might be familiar with the story of the apocalypse. Just to zoom in, we have 2 of the famous horsemen of the apocalypse. Here on the right, representing famine, and on the left, of course, death riding the famous pale horse. Now we're going to come out of this. Let me close, go back into full screen, and I'm going to take you up right into the spire of the Sainte Chapelle. So this really is quite unique. No one ever gets to go up here. We come up here occasionally for filming, for documentary work, but it's difficult to access. So let me just show you. We'll tilt up a little bit. So we're actually right in the body of the spire itself, with a fantastic 360-degree view over Paris. Now we'll look out west. You might be able to recognize some of the great landmarks. Of course, here on the left, you can see the Eiffel Tower. In the very far distance is the central business district of Paris. On the right here, we have the Louvre Museum. If I pull back a little bit and go to the right, most of you will be able to recognize one of the great landmarks of Paris, the Sacré-Cœur up on Montmartre here on the northern part of the town. The spire is in fact the 5th spire of the Sainte Chapelle. This one is 19th century. It was completed in 1854. It was an architectural achievement. It was quite incredible. In fact, so incredible that, in fact, Queen Victoria of England, when she visited Paris, came to see the actual structure being built. It served as a model for the spire of Notre Dame that unfortunately was destroyed in 2019. Now, we can't finish the visit without having a look at Notre Dame. For those of you who know Paris, you know Notre Dame is literally opposite the Sainte Chapelle. So here you see it as it appears today. Of course, 3 years ago, you would have seen the spire rising up between the 2 western towers and the roof along here. As you can see, work's still going on. The crane here above the towers. Hopefully, it will be accessible probably by the end of 2024. That's the hope anyway. And to reassure everyone, it has been announced that the spire will be an exact copy of the spire that was destroyed in the fire. On the very pinnacle of the Sainte Chapelle here, we see the great statue of St. Michael, the Archangel St. Michael. He's protecting Paris from his vantage point on the Sainte Chapelle. Now, one last look around. Yes, there's graffiti on the spire of the Sainte Chapelle. And what we're going to do is we're going to finish the visit. Hopefully, if I can control this thing, if we go up here, we can finish the visit back down in the courtyard where we started. Now, as we said at the very beginning of the visit, the Sainte Chapelle is also is combined with the conciergerie. Some of you might know the conciergerie. It's underneath these buildings here. It has vast Gothic chambers dating from the time of the residence of the French kings from the early 14th century. And of course, it became notorious during the French Revolution as the prison for those people who were then tried by the famous revolutionary courts. And in fact, they exited the conciergerie through this archway to go to their unfortunate death by guillotine. They would leave this courtyard. So when you come to Paris, you must remember to get the combined ticket that allows you to visit both monuments. I will answer your questions when I come out of this full screen mode. Obviously, you can follow all our activities on Facebook and Instagram. We're very good at keeping people up to date with our news, and we have a young person working with us now who really knows how to use social media, and she's enjoying every minute of it, so she can keep you up to date with wonderful images and our latest news. So I'm going back out of full screen and handing back to Tiana.
Wonderful. What a wonderful tour, Christopher. This was really, I don't have words. And I think, many of our guests here share the same sentiment. I want to share with you just a few. Tell me if we could put some of those comments. They're incredible. Julie says, this is amazing. You're doing a wonderful job, and we all agree with that. Patricia is asking about concerts this year. I think Cecile mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, so we start our classic concert season starts in a couple of weeks. In fact, on the 12th of March. Concerts will be held from mid-March through to the end of September, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday evenings. So we have a concessionary, we have a private organizer who programs the concerts 4 days a week. So that's also on our website. There's a page dedicated to the concerts and the link that takes you to the private organizer with the full programs, reservations, etc.
Fantastic. Yes, I can't wait to take part in one of those. This must be
it's a great moment. You can come and visit the monument in the daytime and explore all the stained glass, and then come back in the evening and enjoy a concert in the dappled colored light of the Sainte Chapelle. It really is it's quite beautiful. I've been working here for 27 years. I was in the Sainte Chapelle this morning for something very banal, taking measurements, but I'm still in awe of the building every time I go in there.
Yes,
you can't visit it enough.
Thank you. We also just maybe before we go into the next few questions. So again, this was a preview that Christopher has just shared with us, but the full visit with our lecturer from the Sainte Chapelle is available on their website. So we also are going to share in the comments the different the times that are available. So remind me, Christopher, the next visits are going to be available.
Okay, the next visits, the first visit, in fact, is on Friday, the 25th. It's at 5, let me check with my colleague Melanie.
Oh, yes. 11 a.m. Eastern
time. It's at 5 p.m. Paris times. Mm-hmm. On the website, we put our local time, and then we put standard Eastern time, Central and Pacific times are all indicated. So hopefully when people go on and check, they can see, according to their time zone, for example, in the US, exactly what time they should connect. When they go on to the actual ticketing itself, you first of all choose the number of screens you want, then the date and the time. The time indicated on the ticketing, of course, is Paris time. So if you're expecting it to show up at 11 a.m. because you're in New York, It shows 5 p.m. Don't worry, 5 p.m. is our time.
Fantastic. I just shared in the comments all the different, the next 5, I think, the next 5 visits available. So don't hesitate. This is not a $10 $10 visit where you get this such a stunning story shared by wonderful lecturers of the Sainte Chapelle. I highly recommend it. We have just seen a short preview, so I just can't imagine how much more there is to learn about this masterpiece.
Okay, I just see a question come up from Robin Hamilton, talking about the upper tympanum. It's 19th century. In fact, the original one, or what's left of it after the revolution, is actually on display in the lower chapel, part of it. But the upper tympanum is, in fact, 19th century.
Yes, fantastic. So I think right now we have. Do we take maybe one last question? Maybe if anyone wants to share a last question, otherwise
most people want to know where the crown of thorns are today.
Okay.
Obviously, during the fire of Notre Dame, it was one of the first objects that needed to be saved. It was, although it was terrifying, the accounts are quite amusing because a young fireman bravely went into the crypt of the treasury, and he came out victoriously holding an object in the shape of a crown. It was an empty reliquary. The actual crown of thorns was in a safe, so they had to go back in and battle with the smoke and fire to get the actual crown of thorns. It was initially held in the town hall overnight. It was then moved to the Louvre Museum, where it was held in proper conservation conditions. And it will return to Notre Dame, obviously, once the treasury and the building is open again to the public. But there haven't been any venerations of the crown of thorns since the fire. So we haven't actually seen it since. It is there. I can assure everyone the crown of thorns is quite safe. But we've had it twice in the Sainte Chapelle in the last 200 years. In 1997, Pope John II had it taken from Notre Dame to the Sainte Chapelle. And in 2014, which was the 800th anniversary of the birth of Louis IX, Saint Louis, the sainted king, a special veneration was held in the Sainte Chapelle, which is extremely rare. The Sainte Chapelle is not a place of worship anymore. It's not a consecrated chapel. It's a state monument. We're often asked, when's the next mass at the Sainte Chapelle? We don't have religious services. It was deconsecrated at the time of the revolution.
Wonderful. Wow, there are so many more questions, and we have the whole team of the Sainte Chapelle who are going to answer all your question, including Christopher and his team, who will be answering for you. So I think there was, I think some of you have actually purchased the next visit on Friday, and a link will be sent to you with access to the actual virtual visit by tomorrow. So I think is there anything you'd like to add, Christopher, for our
No,
guests?
we're just looking forward to either having you join us on the remote visits, and obviously we're going to be we're here waiting for you all to come back. Everyone has to come back to Paris. You can never visit Paris enough. So as soon as you all are able to travel, we'll be here to welcome you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the warm welcome, and we're looking forward to visit the Sainte Chapelle. Thank you for this wonderful tour. Thank you, Christopher, Cécile, and your whole team, Melanie, and as Ilona, the team at the team at the Centre des Monuments Nationaux, as well as our colleagues at the Cultural Services of the French Embassy, who we are presenting this French Heritage Series with. We will come to you with more in the future. And Cécile, do you have a last few words for our guest today?
Sorry.
Mute. Sorry.
No, I hope you enjoyed the visit, and I look forward to seeing you. So I hope that you will also plan a trip to Paris soon, and that we will welcome you again in Paris at the Sainte Chapelle.
J'ai encore une chose. One last thing. We talked about the restoration of Sainte Chapelle. Now we're actively on our website of the Sainte Chapelle, both in English and in French pages. We're going to show you how work is evolving over the next few months. We'll be adding extra images and text, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks, month or so, we might get some interviews with the people who are actually carrying out the restoration work. So follow us on the restoration. And as Cécile said at the very beginning of the visit, don't be afraid of seeing scaffolding on the outside of the building. It's certainly not going to impact the inside and your experience when you come here. Okay?
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both so much. And looking forward to see you at the Sainte Chapelle. Thank you for your kind invitation.
You're welcome.
Merci.
You're welcome. Goodbye.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Au revoir. Merci.
Thanks for following.
Au revoir.
Bye.
À bientôt.